Да, спасибо.
Forget about it.
So I think we should invite people in.
Okay.
Sit down.
Yeah, we never see each other actually in No.
Oh, I didn't. Because maybe you didn't get my message because I don't work for the US anymore. But I didn't get any. Yeah. I didn't get any.
All okay, Orban?
Yeah, it's fine. And the Kazakhstan ambassador is trying to get his connect. So, but it's on his end, not ours. It's fine. We are doing this. I leave my computer here for you. Right? And like an extra screen, and you can have the.
I will just like share the YouTube link with everyone.
Yeah, you can just send them to our Amir Bek. Let Amir Bek handle the mail. There was a third microphone with the for me and for Samuel. Like this one.
Are you also working with Oybek?
Oh, here we go.
I'm from the Uzbekistan embassy.
Okay, very nice to meet you. Yes. I know your previous ambassador. Delior, you missed me. And just had the opportunity the other day to meet your new ambassador.
I see that. I just need to test your sound.
Of course. I met him once at the investors forum, very briefly, together with Oybek actually. And unfortunately, I have not had the pleasure to have a more in-depth meeting. Perhaps it could be a good idea next week. I'm here until the 11th of February. Then I leave. We'll leave Rome, but maybe it's a good opportunity to talk to our ambassador first. But I don't. It's a good idea. Maybe my. Do you have a card by any chance? But I know your colleague. Also, yes.
We are waiting for the ambassador. Okay, there we are. That's fine. Yeah. No remarks.
Yeah, Oybek.
Я нормально вижу, не как обезьяна. Нормально. С этим девайсом. Так, надо. Тест, окей. Camera, so we should invite more people to sit down, I guess.
So we will speak there.
So I'm just showing to our Kazakh partners the room, and now I will switch to the speakers. Was it this one?
Four ambassadors and Kazakh ambassador.
Айдар, можно мне протестировать ваше аудио, пожалуйста?
Доброе утро. Нас слышно?
Да, слышно вас прекрасно. Спасибо. We are good to go. Huh? Господин посол, доброе утро. Я тогда начинаю вебинар. А для вас будет.
A little bit. She's doing much better.
То, что я говорю, камера на меня смотрит.
If you have been to Georgia, you probably, and I just don't know, I don't know. I know, I'm sure. I guess, I disagree.
No, it's okay. We can go back. We can go back here. I want to.
Where you come from? I'm living in.
Something myself.
Thanks to you.
I've invited you for a coffee. So yes, I sent you an email. Do you have a data quality? So, ladies and gentlemen,
And next week.
Welcome to this event. So we already have 60 people online, so I suggest we start. Thank you very much for being here in person. I think we had a very, very busy week indeed in Brussels this week with the EU Central Asia Forum. Today we welcome you for a follow-up event, which is organized independently by Euro-Uz together with our partners, ENC, and hosted and co-hosted together with UNDP Brussels, whom I'd like to thank very much for welcoming us here today at the UN Brussels building. Central Asia Economic Roundtable, looking into the future of of cooperation with the European Union. Central Asia is gaining more and more importance for the European Union. In the last years, we heard Monsieur Borrell, who said that it's almost the center of the world, and the path that the Central Asian countries took in terms of the attention and the relationship with the European Union over the last 6-7 years has been incredible. We are very welcome, Their Excellencies ambassadors from Central Asia here today. Unfortunately, I have a message from ambassador from Kazakhstan, of Kyrgyzstan this morning, who was not able to make it back to Brussels in order to be here in person last night. But again, he really tried, and he passed his best regards. We are going to make a welcoming remarks from our partner Samuel, Managing Director of ENC. Samuel, please.
I will be very brief because Oybek already mentioned the essentials, which is, of course, that the relationship between the EU and Central Asia is at a pivotal and, I think, fundamentally historical point. This week testifies to that to its fullest extent. Testifies this to its fullest extent, both in terms of investment as well as in terms of numeric show up and importance in protocol level and importance given to the Investors Forum on Monday, Tuesday. So I think that's something to really embrace. And today's event here at the United Nations, where our lovely hosts have hosted Oybek's Euro-Uz organizations, as well as the organization that I work for, the European Neighbourhood Council. But we're very, very happy to be able to transmit some of the messages of the importance of both the Investors Forum as well as the Global Gateway. So I think I will just stop here and thank, of course, first and foremost, the speakers, our co-organizers, as well as the audience here today, who are both offline and online. Thank you very much, and I hope to have a good 2 panels.
Thank you very much, Simon. Excellencies, if you don't mind, I will invite you to join us. Soraya, you can put the first up. So we have and you can show the. So Ambassador of Kazakhstan is also joining us today online. What you will do, you move this there. So I will start from here, and we have a backup microphone. Is more. The Investors Forum was a very important event for the European Union. And we've heard a lot of private sector. We heard the EU. We heard your ministers say we had a lot of panels and 550, I think, almost participants, which is almost unheard of for Brussels, for Central Asia. What I would like to highlight with our first panel, Your Excellencies, is we have a lot of policy centers. We have a lot of officials also from the European Union. We have members of parliament in this room, and I have seen also online of the European Parliament. What I wanted to ask you, Excellencies, is to try to give us some highlights from the Central Asian perspective, from your country's perspective, on how the Investors Forum went and what would be your plans and your follow-up actions and what your expectations are, the most important, I think, from the EU, because here we have people who are very often writing policy for the EU. And I think that is very important to highlight the Central Asian perspective as well. So I suggest maybe we start.
You think, or I can?
It's your choice, absolutely your choice.
Okay.
The microphone is on.
It's on. So thank you. Is working?
It's working?
Switch the, there is a bit on, just switch on the mic.
I think it's now it's.
Yeah.
Yeah, we hear you.
Great.
That's one, two,
Yeah,
one.
this is okay.
You?
Okay. So, good morning, everybody. My name is Fazilov, Ambassador of Uzbekistan, Ambassador designate of Uzbekistan to Belgium. And thank you, Oybek, thank you for European Neighborhood Council and the UNDP to organize this event. It's a pleasure for me to participate in this roundtable following this important investment forum, which held in Brussels 29 and 30th of January. And before talking about cooperation of EU and Central Asia, I would like to draw your attention to the fact that in recent years, Central Asia has embarked on a path of good neighborhood, stability, joint partnership, and progress. Within a few years, many of problems that have accumulated for decades in Central Asia and in solution of which nobody believed has been resolved in last 6-7 years. And as a result, we have actually a very stable and prosperous region who is who is developing more and more, and new political atmosphere has emerged in Central Asia. Our region became a promising center of economic development, transport and communication bridge connecting Europe, East and West, North and South. And this is why Central Asia, as Oybek rightly said, became in the focus of international community, including in European Union. And following this cooperation of Central Asia with EU and its member countries at all levels have significantly enhanced the last 3-4 years. First, we 2 times organized already head of states meeting. First in Astana in 2022, and last year it was in Cholpon-Ata in Kyrgyzstan. And now we are working to organize first ever official EU Central Asia Summit. It will be in Uzbekistan at the end of April this year. That's why the investment forum, which was held in Brussels recently, was very important because we are talking a lot about connectivity, and this was an initiative for President of Uzbekistan, His Excellency Mirziyoyev, in 2021, when he, in negotiations with Borrell, he initiated organizing in Samarkand Connectivity and Sustainable Development Conference, and this give the impetus, a start to our efforts to improve connectivity between EU and Central Asia. After this, you know very well, ABRD made a report on different itineraries of connectivity, and now we are in stage of further improve this connectivity. And if you look at the numbers, the Investors Forum, it was very successful event, I think, because we exchanged the views about different points of growth between the 2 regions. And as for Uzbekistan, we signed a memorandum of understanding on financing projects, transport projects, with European Investment Bank, an amount of 500 million euros, and also European Commission Executive Vice President Valdis Dombrovskis announced that European and international financial institutions committed 10 billion euros in support and investment towards sustainable transport connectivity with Central Asia. And Oybek asked me about what our interests, in which we are interested in this. And I would like to outline some key areas for further joint work in enhancing transport connectivity between Central Asia and Europe. First of all, I would like to say it's critical importance to improve transport infrastructure in Central Asia and increase its capacity in the Caspian Sea. The business of Uzbekistan is interested in developing logistical centers within our country and also warehouses infrastructure in Azerbaijan national terminals in Georgia ports. As a recent EBRD study reveals, there are significant infrastructure investment needed in Central Asia, worth roughly 19 billion in order to improve the region's transport network. Today, our country pays special attention to attract capital in renewing locomotive fleets and modernization of existing traction substations of the National Railway Company, as well as developing new toll tunnels and high-speed roads on private partnership basis. We also must accelerate digitalization process in international freight transportation. Uzbekistan already took concrete step in this. We, together with Turkey, we introduced electronic exchange e-permit authorization form, and also with Azerbaijan, we also introduced e-tier, and we successfully switched to digital tier with Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Turkmenistan. So in this regard, we see the need to conduct a comprehensive audit of all services in multimodal transportation and digitalize them all in future. Another important issue when it's come to improve connectivity between the EU and Central Asia, we see that there is a need to reduce administrative costs across the Trans-Caspian corridor. Today, we need tariff beneficial for business because business who is generating the volume of cargo traffic. This is a business, and according to analysis, the current the tariffs and charges on this, I mean, middle corridor, current tariff and charges are 1.5 times higher than, for example, north-south roads. So we must take concrete actions to simplify visa issuance for drivers, reduce the time frame required for issuing permits in multimodal cargo transportation. So Uzbekistan is ready to cooperate in these directions. We are certain that this will, all this will improve competitiveness of this middle corridor and improve the connectivity between two regions. Shortly, thank you.
Thank you very much, Excellency. Indeed, the cooperation in Central Asia today, we have not seen, I think, in the history so far to the level that we see today. And on my memory, I've been 24 years in Brussels. I have not seen all the ambassadors together in a setting like that, which is not an official EU institution or an official Belgian institution. So I'd like to thank you again, Excellencies. I know also how busy, and I want to reiterate this to our guests online and offline, how busy the ambassadors' schedules are in Brussels, and having you here is indeed a great honor. Next, what I would like to do, I would like to give the floor to His Excellency Ambassador from Kazakhstan. He's joining us online. I see there is not a Belgian flag there, so you're from Luxembourg, I think. And
Your Excellency, you have the floor for your introductory remarks.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Well, I hope you're hearing me very well.
Hear you very well.
Perfect. Well, good morning to everybody. And indeed, Your Excellency, my dear brothers are here with you and there. And ladies and gentlemen, indeed, I am in Luxembourg. Just I'm sitting at our office of honorary consul. That's why behind me the flags of Kazakhstan and Luxembourg. This. First of all, I would like to extend a warm regards to the participants of this roundtable and thank the Euro-Uz, UNDP and the ANC for organizing this, I think, the important event just after the big event of Investors Forum. It is for me a great pleasure to participate in this roundtable, and once again, I apologize for joining you online because I'm on a trip to Luxembourg. I have several meetings here, but all the events when it comes to our region is important for me. That's why so far I would like to be with you now today. Your Excellencies, dear friends, dear colleagues, in a span of few years, sustainable transport connectivity between Central Asia and Europe has become a cornerstone of our cooperation. And just the other day, we witnessed a big success of the first inaugural Investor Forum in Brussels. There is no doubt this forum demonstrated that Europe and Central Asia need closer partnership in mutually beneficial areas, including transport and connectivity. So according to the BSD study on sustainable transport connectivity between Europe and Central Asia, the most sustainable transport road between us goes through southern Kazakhstan, and Kazakhstan has the most, as you know, the investment projects was 40 billion euro open for mainly for European companies. Being a strong economy and the region's transit hub, we are eager to welcome European know-how standards and hence, I would say, interoperability of our transport network with our partners in Central Asia, Caucasus, and of course Europe. This promotes the corridor approach along the middle corridor and increase efficiency of our transit. The implementation of these recommendations will increase, first of all, competitiveness of the road and open up opportunities for economic development of all 5 Central Asian countries by improving links within our region, also with Europe. We want to welcome the EU's pragmatic approach to the cooperation and that I deliberately promise to operationalize the study. That's as mentioned, His Excellency, Mr. Ambassador, my friend, Ambassador of Uzbekistan, a 10 billion euro investment committed announced by Executive Vice President Valdis Dombrovskis not only means real money to improve infrastructure. It also the kind of signal that the EU's major transport and trade companies, producing companies, that the partners along the corridor are trusted friends of the EU. This package includes important commitment between EU and Kazakhstan. For instance, as you know, the Ministry of Transport of Kazakhstan and Development Bank of Kazakhstan signed MOUs on financing promising transport and logistic projects for 820 million euro. Also, the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, EBRD, and Kazakhstan have signed 2 memorandums of understanding with the investment pipeline worth 1.5 billion euro. This project already under preparation for the overall development of transport connectivity in our region, Central Asia region. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, I would like to underline that we strongly believe that closer regional cooperation among all the Central Asia countries will strengthen the efforts of each country and the EU. With this, I wish all the participants today of our roundtable productive and fruitful discussion, collaboration, exchange of views, and a good atmosphere and constructive dialogue. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you very much, Excellency, for again finding the time to join us and for your introductory remarks. Now, with your arrival here, Ambassador, Turkmenistan has also started to engage more and more in recent years with the European Union, and we have already seen a lot of success in that engagement. Your participation in this forum, we all had national country sessions, and I'd like to, of course, come back to you. I think, yeah, for this. To ask you the same to offer your introductory remarks to us today.
Thank you. Thank you for all participants for attending this dialogue. And I would like to thank all organizers who made this today's roundtable happen. And Mr. Oybek, Mr. Samuel, and UNDP staff. You mentioned that you never seen together all Central Asian ambassadors here for this kind of dialogue, but it should be more important for us. We have to initiate this kind of dialogue, and the recent investors forum also demonstrated it. Ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor to be here at this roundtable on this topic, which is the most relevant in the current inter-regional cooperation between the Central Asia and the European Union. Today, we stand at the threshold of a new era of partnership. On that promises mutual benefits and shared growth. Central Asia, with its rich history and vast resources, is eager to deepen its integration into the global economy and the EU. The European Union, with its advanced technologies and commitment to sustainable development, is an ideal partner of Central Asia on this path. In the present landscape, the transport sector is swiftly ascending to the forefront, assuming a heightened significance as a key area of cooperation between two regions. The corridors that are underlined during the investors forum as part of the modern Silk Roads offers a strategic route for trade between Europe and Asia. And we don't see any barriers on this path, except for opportunities. By enhancing these corridors, infrastructure and streamlining customs procedures, we can significantly reduce transit times and the costs, benefiting economies on both ends. The EU expertise and investments in this sector can accelerate these improvements, creating a more connected Euro-Asia. In this regard, we highly interested in gaining expertise in the management of transport infrastructures, the introduction of digital technologies for traffic management. Therefore, major European logistics operators interested in using existing logistics capacities in Turkmenistan, they are all would be most welcome. The recent forum just held 2 days ago highlighted the keen interest of European financial institutions and companies in actively participating in the implementation of projects aimed at expanding and developing transport network within and between regions. This was also evidenced by the fact that even some our partner European companies, also Turkmen companies, couldn't attend, couldn't participate in this forum just because for only one reason. The number of registered ones exceeded the maximum capacity of the venue. After the country session of the forum, just thanks to the European Commission, thanks to the European Union officials, we could organize the country sessions. And just after this country session forum, dedicated to investment opportunities in the transport sector of Turkmenistan, where we detailed exactly in which areas of transport we are going to see foreign investments. We began to receive requests and various proposals for detailed study of the present projects and the possibility of their participation in these projects. Therefore, we are eagerly looking forward to expanding our collaboration with the European Union, with European counterparts in this sector. Our team is now actively engaged in arranging a gathering of transport experts from both Central Asia and the European Union in Ashgabat, in Turkmenistan, in upcoming month. This meeting aims to comprehensively address the outcomes of recent investors forum and explore avenues for enhancing the transport capabilities between our regions. We believe this initiative will foster a deeper understanding and cooperation in transport sector. Another key area within the transport sector where European investment opportunities abound is the digitalization of transport infrastructure across the region. This topic also received thorough discussion during the forum, underscoring its importance and potential for collaboration. One more priority area where we see the positive dynamics and the potential active engagement with the EU partners is the transition to green energy. The region possesses huge potential in producing hydrogen, renewable energy, such as solar and wind energy. For example, the natural environment of Turkmenistan, specifically the country's unique desert, that rich in a wide range of minerals, could be utilized for the manufacturing of solar panels. The transition to greener economies in Central Asia, aligned with the global methane pledge, is both a challenge and an opportunity. Turkmenistan, despite the fact that it's energy power in the region, a major player in natural gas production, is striving to reduce methane emissions and is actively exploring ways to use its natural gas resources more sustainably. This is evidenced by the announcements of Turkmenistan, by the president of Turkmenistan at the COP28 on joining the Global Methane Initiative. I would not be mistaken if I noted that this opens a large window to Europe, which has the appropriate technologies and extensive experience in this field. I believe that today's round table brings us closer to the better understanding of the importance of the relevance of further strengthening of inter-regional cooperation engagement in all sectors of economy. In conclusion, allow me to quote the impactful words, the recent statement of Vice President Mr. Skinas at the forum. He exactly said that if someone asked me to point at the region in the world where positive changes are happening, without any doubt, I would point at Central Asia. These words means a lot for us. The task is that we have to match these words, and we are moving forward towards this aim. For that reason, these kind of dialogues, all of these are results oriented. For that reason, we fully support this kind of dialogue. And for the future also, we will continue this tradition. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Coming from a private sector, also we see many European delegations come to Central Asia, and we see European businesses more and more interested in doing business across the region. And particularly, we see a lot of companies which which are coming to Europe to Central Asia are more and more interested as well to do business in Tajikistan. And next, what I want, Your Excellency, also your presence here and your, I would say, the fact that you are appointed to Brussels with your level of previous positions as well, it shows that how important Tajikistan views the relationship with European Union, I believe. And you have been extremely active since you have been appointed to Brussels indeed. And of course, from the private sector will be my next question, but I would offer your introductory remarks because indeed Tajikistan has had more and more engagements here. And what's your perspective? Your perspective is also extremely important.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I'm back. It's a real pleasure and honor for me to be part of this important event. And I would like to say that as we embark on a new year, it's a good opportunity for us and chance to reflect on our common visions and shape our endeavors. Is that working? No. Sorry.
Yeah, it's working.
Yes. Thank you. Now it's working.
We can hear you.
Thank you, Oybek. Thank you, organizers of this event. It's a real pleasure and privilege for me to address this audience at the event kindly organized by ENC, Euros, and United Nations Brussels. As we embark on a new year, it's a very important and precious time for us to reflect on our common visions and our endeavors and how we can shape our joint efforts and initiatives. Yes, Central Asian maturing economics experiencing fast economic growth and investment opportunities. This growth is driven by sound policy, excellent performance of reform agenda, and execution of strategies. By simplifying business schemes and having rapid decision process. And as it was mentioned by previous colleagues, ambassadors, we have a lot of synergetic approaches and the common ambitions as a path to closer integration within the region and between the regions. In this domain, the private sector is the main driving force, which supports the new global supply chain in a very robust way. But the most important asset is a combination of political stability and leadership, economic sustainability, as well as necessary business ecosystem. For Central Asia, with its strategic location, vast natural resources, and human capital, the European Union is an important partner, both politically and economically. The existing interaction mechanisms, partnership agreements, and mechanisms of dialogue in security and policy play an essential role in navigating this evolving landscape. The Global Gateway Initiative, aligned with the UN's 2030 agenda, clearly underscores the EU's commitment to promote sustainable economic partnerships and invest in infrastructure. The development of the transport sector is crucial for advancing interregional cooperation. The Investors Forum held in Brussels served as a promising platform for the main stakeholders, the governments, the financial, international institutions, for the public and private sector, for the transport and logistic entities, in exploring the new avenues of cooperation in the sphere of sustainable transport infrastructure and connectivity. The European Commission plays an instrumental and facilitating role in amplifying these endeavors. And I would like to highlight that Tajikistan, by modernizing existing networks and building new communications infrastructure, both physical and digital, with the support of its partners, including the European Union, significantly contributing to the Middle Corridor. And I don't want to describe and to mention our measures taken. It was rightly underlined by His Excellency Mr. Hayrat Fazilov, President of Uzbekistan, our efforts in building and developing both physical and digital infrastructure in the sphere of transport. Our country, along with the development of hard and soft infrastructure, also actively introducing environmentally friendly technologies. And we cooperate with the EBRD within the Green Cities program. Today, locally produced electric buses operate in the capital. Within the margins of the event of the Investors Forum, we organized the company event entitled Investing in Climate Resilient and Environmentally Sustainable Transport Infrastructure. And I think this theme also is very important due to the impact of climate change and the global warming and the measures taken by the governments and the institutions in this domain. So for that, this is some introductory words. I wish all of us very successful roundtable.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. And again, it shows we see the highlights of. We see the highlights of how the cooperation within Central Asia is really yielding results. First of all, for the Central Asian economies, but also we see more and more investments from the private sector, also European private sector. And I think the role of Kazakhstan here in terms of the history of cooperation, and I'm conscious of your time, Your Excellency, in joining us online, Ambassador Margulan. If you allow me, the first question I'd like to address to you is so we see a lot of investments from European Union in Kazakhstan historically, and also growing over the last years. I would like to ask you, what are the key opportunities? And of course, you are in the process of, there is a lot of discussion, I think, which will continue in our next panel, some of it focusing on the critical raw materials, possibly. But what I want to ask you is, what are the opportunities today for the private sector that you would like to highlight? I see 70 people are also online joining us, and a lot of them are from the private sector.
Well, thank you very much for your question. And once again, thank you for all the introduction of my brothers, colleagues, ambassadors from our region. It is important that all of my colleagues share their views, how we can strengthening our cooperation when it comes to connectivity, when it comes to the prosperity of our region, when it comes to all the infrastructure what we need in our region. There is no doubt that Central Asia as a region, all the 5 countries, is a growing market. You know, there's almost 80 million people right now are living in our region, and it is, I would say, the region is gaining a strong regional identity based on trust of friendship, based on bonds of friendship, good neighborhood, and of course common history and culture. It also shows. Yes, indeed, one of the main pillars of our cooperation with EU and all around the world is economic cooperation and transport and connectivity. We'd like to capitalize all of our benefits and on our strategic location at the crossroads of global north, south, and east-west trade roads. Well, you know, talking about the investors, of course, during just for your information, during the last 30 years, we received more than 330 billion euro of FDI in Kazakhstan, and half of them we received from European countries. So last year we received more than 25 billion euro of FDI. Of course, we try to locate all the all the investment, not only in the energy sector, also for the other sectors, including, of course, transport and transit and logistic. There is no doubt we are cooperating. As you know, in Kazakhstan, it's more than 95%, I would say, all the sectors are private sector in Kazakhstan. So it means the cooperation between EU and Kazakhstan based on the private sector, basically, in general. So, you know, this is also, we have now in Kazakhstan, if I'm not mistaken, more than 20,000 different types of joint ventures. I would say 70% and 80% of all the companies from Germany and France are cooperating, trading with Central Asia through Kazakhstan, and we kind of gave to the rest of the Central Asia. But despite of this, of course, we are looking for some concrete projects. You know, but this is important also, this message from this forum, what we have had. This is that, as mentioned, my friend, brother, Mr. Sapar Palvanov, we don't see any barriers, you know, it's in the contrary, we see the opportunities of our cooperation. This forum also shows how we can identify some concrete projects for the companies from Europe, how they can start some business activities in Kazakhstan or in Central Asia, including Kazakhstan, of course. It was one of the additional good occasions when companies from both sides can socialize, can interact during this investors forum. You know, this, I would say this, as Mr. Buzafakov said, Ambassador Tajikistan, we have a lot of strategic approaches. So this is a synergetic approach, he mentioned. That is important, that we're looking for some synergy when it comes to our cooperation. But one thing I would like to add also, which is important, mentioned Mr. Fazilov, our colleagues from Ambassador of Uzbekistan. We need to reduce some problems. We need to reduce current tariffs. We need to reduce time frame for the transit. We need to reduce, he said, about administrative costs. I fully agree with this, because we need, as he mentioned, that we need to generate the volume of cargo traffic for all the countries. That's why we need hard infrastructure and soft infrastructure. EBRD already announced the 33 projects. What all the private sector from both sides has to focus on this. So I think it's now we created a good platform for the private sector. I think that no doubt Kazakhstan, including all the CIS countries, are open for the European companies. I think it's time for us, for all of us, how we can effectively work together, operating on our markets. Once again, I would say the corridor is aimed to bring about new model of our cooperation. The first is we together can transform our region into the leading transport of logistic hub. Second, connects the all the Asia countries, Eastern Asia and Europe, of course, while keeping Central Asia as its core. And third, we also can play a stabilizing role in global supply chains also. Once again, I think this all the legislative issue in Kazakhstan, for instance, for private sector is open. And for your information, I would like to inform that in Brussels, we just recently established new branch of Kazakh Invest. This is our additional tool, how we can connect and work on the ground, how we can provide more broad information for the European partners. I'm taking this opportunity, I would like to know that we'll very soon will officially organize a special official ceremony, but the Kazakh Invest already started to work in Brussels, so warmly welcome to contact with them also. Thank you very much once again for our meeting today. Unfortunately, I have to leave now for the next meeting, so I apologize. And once again, I would like to wish you a really fruitful today dialogue, constructive exchange of views. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. And coming back to this room, what we have seen, Uzbekistan has become the beneficiary of GSP Plus a couple of years ago, and we are really, but it does take some time. And now we are really, last year we really saw the major impact of that cooperation, where most of the Uzbek exports to the EU they are not liable for import tax. And we see more and more European companies also come to Uzbekistan. We see a lot more trade. Your Excellency, Ambassador Fazilov, I wanted to ask you, again, coming from the private sector, what do you see today, being here in Brussels, are the most interesting areas for European business to look at in Uzbekistan? Because we do have a lot of missions going to Central Asia, not only to Uzbekistan, but particularly because I see the list, I see the private companies, and I'm sure they'd like to have this question answered from your side.
Thank you, Dior. Thank you, Dior.
It's a very soft system, so while we don't get the echo, the room hears us really well. So the microphone.
Thank you, Dior, for this question. And first of all, I would like to say that when it's come to determine some areas of cooperation between EU and Central Asia, or EU and Uzbekistan, I would like to say that we are interested to have comprehensive cooperation in all areas. And Uzbekistan can propose a lot to European business. For example, everybody said that the European Union Commission and the International Financial Institutions committed 10 billion euros for transport sector of Central Asia. This is one area, I would say, key area of cooperation, and we're interested to attract European business to improve transport potential, transport capacity of Central Asia, Central Asian countries, including of Uzbekistan. You rightly said that in 2021, European Union granted GSP Plus status to Uzbekistan, and GSP Plus status became a very strong impetus to our trade, and over the past 2 years, export of Uzbekistan to European markets tripled. And but still, we have to do a lot. That's why one of the main directions, I would say, this is the trade. Uzbekistan is interested in drastic expansion of our trade relations with European Union, primarily in establishing sustainable trade and logistic chains and creating effective tools for support mutual supplies. We're interested together with European Union increase the industrial potential and competitiveness of our economy. Our exporters ready to export over 500 items of industrial goods, approximately worth 4 billion euros to European market. But there is a number of issues to solve in this area. First of all, is setting up in our region network of modern laboratories, standardization and certification centers for products in accordance with EU requirements. Increasing the knowledge and capacity of our exporters in terms of operating in European markets. Carrying out activities aimed at raising awareness of the European companies about the trading opportunities with the countries of our region. Unfortunately, we have not made visible progress on none of these areas yet, but we're interested to attract European business to face all these issues, and I'm confident that coming years, the significance of Central Asia, Uzbekistan, will continue to grow, and we will have more and more European companies to come to do business in Uzbekistan. Actually, we have around 900 joint ventures in Uzbekistan created with capital from European Union and its members, but it's just in my understanding, it's small numbers, so we have huge potential. And what Uzbekistan can propose to European companies? First of all, it's stable country, politically stable country. We have a very big reserves of different type of resources, including critical raw materials when it comes to tungsten, copper, lithium, or germanium, or other critical raw materials. We have huge reserves, and we're interested to process them together with European knowledge and European technologies. And we hope that early finalization of enhanced partnership and cooperation agreement with the European Union will contribute to achieving this objectives. I will not say about transport because we already said that about connectivity. I will just add also about green energy, as my Turkmen colleague said, that we have a huge, all Central Asian countries have a huge potential on developing green energy. And for example, by 2030, Uzbekistan intend to increase the power generation capacity of renewable energy to 25,000 megawatt, increasing the share of green energy in our electric system from 14 to 40%. So it's a huge task, but we're looking to attract European investment. And another big area, priority area, I would say, when we can cooperate is tourism sector. It's not the industry is recovering rapidly after COVID pandemic and showing consistently high growth. Last year, only more than 7 million foreign tourists visited Uzbekistan, but for this year we wait 10 million tourists. And Central Asia, not only Uzbekistan, Central Asia has enormous potential in tourism sector, but it's far being fully exploited. So we propose to jointly develop different types of tourism programs, sustainable tourism in Central Asia, and this program can cover, for example, specific projects for modernization of infrastructure and reconstruction of historical heritage sites, expansion of geography and frequency of flights, development of joint tourism products, and simplification of visa procedures or construction of hotels, so on. So this is also a very important area when we are looking for close cooperation with European businesses. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Indeed, the spectrum of subjects that we could cover is quite incredible with Central Asia, because very often Central Asia is, I would say, understood in European Union, because I'm here 24 years, I can say that for a fact. But coming from Uzbekistan, my career has actually started in Turkmenistan. I have been working as a commercial director of a Belgian oil and gas company for many years, and I've seen the opportunities in Turkmenistan that the European companies have, and actually the private sector is engaged in Turkmenistan for many years. There is one of the biggest cargo airlines, Cargolux, that is transporting most of the air cargo between Europe and China, is in fact stopping in Turkmenistan. And that has been instrumental for the trade between EU and Uzbekistan, Central China, in fact, during the pandemic even. And Your Excellency, so I'd like, and you have introduced, your colleagues have introduced me to some of the business leaders who were part of this forum Monday. They are in logistics as well. So I'd like to ask you, how you would prioritize the relationships in terms of also the private sector with the EU in the next years? Where do you see really the opportunities, and where would you see the priorities from your perspective?
Thank you, Mr. Oybek. Yeah, it's a very good question. If I list today all possible directions and the projects where we can, where we want to see the European investments, and where we can see it, and where the huge opportunities, it will be very big list. It's because between Turkmenistan and the European Union and the European companies, there are a lot of areas that we can uncover. For example, just one forum focused on just one topic, transport, gathered hundreds of private sectors from European side, also from the other regions of the world. They are all interested in Turkmen, in Central Asian possible projects because there are a lot of, for example, just one example, it's a Turkmenbashi port. We have biggest, I could say that, biggest port on the Caspian Sea, but we don't use the full capacity of this port. We couldn't reach the full capacity management. And here we actively attract the European interested private sectors in order to reach this maximum. And it's just one example. And Turkmenistan and our neighboring countries, Central Asia, it's we have a very rich minerals, and by importing these minerals from Central Asia to Europe, we don't only help support the EU diversification of supply chains. We also help them, we also support the green transition. For example, all these minerals and all we listed today, the possible areas, for example, the production of hydrogen, it's also supportive for this important for this green transition in European Union and in Europe. Turkmenistan now relies on and consider the European private sector. It's a reliable partner. For that reason, for this strategic projects and important projects for Turkmenistan, we try to attract the European players, European companies, because European companies have a very rich, very good success story in our country. Also, it's the traditionally the tendency come to Turkmenistan, doing business in Turkmenistan, European countries. But the private sector of Turkmenistan now changes this tradition. Private sector is becoming more powerful in our country, and it tries to reach the European markets. In this forum also, lots of Turkmen companies couldn't participate because of that reason that I mentioned about it. They have lots of partners. It makes me, truth be told, very proud and happy to see that. And they have good partners here. They are doing a job here. And the main topic of this in 2 days forum, we had dozens of meetings with the European private sector. And the main topic was to have joint ventures in Turkmenistan. And we have lots of proposals. And we are started working on that. For that reason, I can, without any doubt, say that the recent forum, it's very result-oriented, and we try to not just keep it like as a dialogue. We try to continue and to gather the experts meeting in order to discuss about the results. In generally, I want to say that we see the interest from Turkmen private sector into the European market and the European private sector in the Turkmen market. Turkmenistan is doing very good positive steps, progress on the path of creation good condition for European foreign companies in order to make it more comfortable for them to make business in Turkmenistan. The legislation, we are doing very good progress in developing the good legislation, good platform for these European and foreign companies. Turkmenistan is open for all partners, but the European partners, we consider it's more reliable partners of Turkmenistan. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. And I'd like to pick up on one of the subjects you mentioned, and this is also a subject which is extremely important for the European Union, and its policies in Uzbekistan. And sorry, I keep saying Uzbekistan because I tend to speak a lot, but in fact in Malaysia. And as EU, the EU engagement indeed is more focused on the region rather than on specific countries. And this is very important. The reaction to that we see today, also the Central Asian countries are engaging together with the EU, and I think that produces well. But again, picking up on a key subject is climate resilience. And Your Excellency, I want to come back to you with the question that how does Tajikistan handle and approach the subject of climate change, climate resilience, and maybe within your engagement, if that subject plays a role in your engagement within Central Asia and also within the outside players, stakeholders like the European Union. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Oybek. This is really very pressing and important issue for all of us. And we're happy that we've been given the space within this Investors Forum to introduce our achievements and our approaches from the regional perspective. We support the international community's efforts to achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions. We have adopted a green economy development strategy until 2037, and we intend to double our green energy production capacity by 2050. We hope that our collaboration with the EU and with our partners in the construction and rehabilitation of hydropower plants, energy facilities will be increased and strengthened. Climate change and rapid global warming negatively affect our water resources. And to adopt these realities, Tajikistan intends to increase generation through the introduction of other sources of renewable energy, in particular solar and wind energy. With the implementation of the mentioned measures in 2032, electricity production in my country will come from renewable resources. And in the annual address to the Parliament, His Excellency the President of Tajikistan stated that by 2037, Tajikistan will be a green country. And we will try to use all our efforts, all potential that we have at our disposal to achieve this ambitious goal. I would like to underline that my government, in cooperation with the United Nations and the other partners, will host in Dushanbe on June 10th, 13th, the third high-level international conference on International Decade for Action Water for Sustainable Development. The third Dushanbe International Conference is designed to inspire new partnerships and accelerate actions to achieve water-related goals of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. And I would like to use this chance and invite all of you distinguished audience to be part of our initiatives and engagement in Dushanbe to enrich the spirit of our partnership, to bring new ideas and explore new avenues for our collaboration to address this global issue. Supply of critical raw materials. This is another important domain of our collaboration with the EU and beyond. And if I may, it's vital for green transition and resilience of key industries. It's essential in maintaining supply chain and contributing to economic growth. And as it was mentioned by distinguished colleagues, His Excellencies, in Central Asia, we have dozens of critical raw materials that are already extracted and refined by consolidated processing chain. It's a huge untapped potential that can contribute to the development of our regions. And today we talked about sustainable development of infrastructure, trade and investment opportunities and incentives for business and the environment. But I would like to say that sustainable economic development and interregional cooperation may not be achieved without overwhelming security. And to adequately address security challenges, it is crucial that novel mechanisms and measures are in place. We are working with the EU within different programs, WOMCAG, and on the level. And therefore, it is an actual necessity to calibrate the cooperation programs to meet stemming from security challenges, possible spillover effects. We hope that our dialogue mechanisms on security issues also will be very well placed and strengthened and addressed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. And indeed, it's one of the particular things in Brussels that I've never seen anywhere before is you tend to run before the time for most of the events, which is a very interesting thing. But Excellency, I'd like to thank you again. And wrapping up this panel, what I want to mention is, well, indeed, so we have never seen this kind of cooperation within Central Asia. And collaboration internally, but also we've never seen Central Asia engage in such a consolidated approach with other regions. I see here we have the representatives of Azerbaijan also. We have a good partnership these days, interregional partnership. We have engagement that sees Central Asia today makes regionalization that we see globally go beyond the fact that, okay, there are regions cooperating within each other, but Central Asia is indeed engaging throughout the world with different regions together. We saw the presidents of Central Asian countries meet with most of the world leaders together over the last several months, I'd say, starting November, probably 6 months. What I would like to urge the European companies, of course, and European private sector and European think tanks, and to try to spend more time to engage with Central Asia, to understand, to travel. And next panel we will have after the break, I think, will cover a little bit more, let's say, expert discussion, Middle Corridor, Central Asia, a role in the framework of EU global engagement, business and human development, which will be moderated by Samuel. At this point, again, I would like to thank Your Excellencies very much for joining us, and we will go on a short break. Thank you very much.
Oh, yeah.
Katarzyna, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Katarzyna,
Yes,
can you
yes, I
hear me?
can hear you. Do you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Do you hear me well?
Yes, now we hear you. Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
perfect.
Good,
Checking the volume. Thanks. To everyone here today for the second panel of our event. I'm Samuel de Verwesterbij. I'm the director of the European Neighbour Council, and I will try my best to moderate the panel two today. As you can see, we have two speakers offline, and we also have two speakers online. I'd like to perhaps just start off again by thanking our host, UN, and also our partners, EUROS, as well as my colleagues at the ENC for organizing this very, very timely event, which essentially fits perfectly with the Investors Forum and all the work that's going on around Global Gateway. We're very lucky to have with us these great speakers. And as I just mentioned to Camilla, we are talking about, SDGs, the UN's role, social, environmental context of Global Gateway and Investors Forum. And I'm extremely pleased to be able to have such a great panel who can both speak, as Camilla will, on the broader picture of the UN and SDGs in the context of also Global Gateway, something that I will speak a little bit about afterwards. Dimitri Mariasin will also talk about this, as well as Emmanuel Dupuy, who is here with us and will talk about the French perspective within the concept of the Global Gateway. And of course, Katerina Vaviernia, who is in Kazakhstan remotely with us, and who will talk a little bit about how the UNDP and Sustainable Development Goals actually take place on the ground in Kazakhstan. I will introduce each speaker formally one by one once I get to it, but I think maybe first it's good and constructive to give a little bit of context to Global Gateway, to Investors Forum. How does all of this really linked with Sustainable Development Goals? What does it actually mean for the Caucasus and Central Asia specifically, and so forth? If we think about panel one, the Uzbek ambassador mentioned critical raw materials, and the Turkmen ambassador mentioned the EU as a more reliable, very reliable partner. I think that's an interesting departing point, because what Global Gateway and Investors Forum, what we saw on Monday, Tuesday, what these big initiatives in infrastructure and critical raw materials, sustainable energy and so forth do, is that they're, of course, they're creating a type of complementary, but also counter offer to some other infrastructure and large-scale connectivity projects in the world. Indeed, I can hear China, someone whisper China. Of course, Belt and Road is important to mention here. For the longest period of time, Belt and Road has played a very, very important numerical investment role in the region. And so, as any comparative advantage logic dictates, the EU has to come up with something that's worth offering. And so one could either say, I'm going to offer the exact same amount, or you can try to offer something that spends the money better, something that's more sustainable, and something that heightens these countries' economies, has more tech transfer, and also allows for, kind of environmentally friendly standards to leave a legacy for Central Asia. And that's, of course, where critical raw materials are essential. I'm not going to get into the details of how these critical raw materials function, but I think it was mentioned briefly before as well. Of course, they're essential in terms of our energy transition, and everything from heat induction and silicone and so forth. And a longer story that we won't go into. But essentially, the big question becomes, how does one mine these critical raw materials sustainably? And here the question of labor laws, here the question of technology transfer become essential. And that's essentially also where the Sustainable Development Goals have a big role to play. Now, very briefly, at the Investors Forum, I had the privilege of moderating the session on Turkmenistan on Tuesday at the Investors Forum. I had of course, the opportunity to spend time with the guests who were there and discussing with the transport delegations, as well as many other business people who were there. And the message, there were many messages I took with me, but one of them, which I found very important, was that there is a very strong consciousness among both EU as well as local business and government in the fact that the Global Gateway Investors Forum offers something that allows these economies to transition into middle-income economies, that allow these economies to develop the necessary technology to be at a higher level. Someone gave an interesting example, which I thought would be fun to share, which was Turkey. One can make up their mind about whether it's entirely true or not, but I thought there was relevance in this case, which was essentially that the EU, since the customs union in 1995, has been building a regulatory framework on environment, on labor, and on many other sectors in Turkey, which has allowed this country to become a booming supply chain hub with of course, a very, very important trade with the EU. And so I think some are viewing this as the next step, the next natural step of that, which is, of course, extremely beneficial both for the EU as well as for the Central Asian republics. So one last thing about time management, and then I think we will have the opportunity to discuss all of these topics in more detail. About time management, all speakers will talk for approximately 10 minutes. So I will try to make sure that we keep that time so that we have moments also to have a Q&A and discussion with the audience members who are here. The duration is a little bit over an hour, so I'd like to try to end around 12:10, so that we have some time to discuss afterwards as well. Now, let me kick off the panel by introducing Camilla Brückner. She is the UNDP UN Director of the office here in Brussels. She most recently served as the Director of UNDP Nordic Representation Office and Manager of the UN City and Joint UN Functions in Copenhagen. She's also a Danish compatriot like myself. I would take pleasure in that. Previously, she was Deputy Chief of Staff and Deputy Director of UNDP Executive Office and has a long career, 15-year long career in the Danish Ministry of Foreign Affairs, as well as having been the Deputy Permanent Representative in New York. Camilla, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yes. Yes. So thank you very much, Samuel, for this introduction, and welcome everybody to the UN House, and welcome to those guests who also come from outside. It's great that people have been able to come in so many in this great numbers. So excellencies and colleagues, it's really my pleasure to provide some thoughts at the occasion of this very interesting and stimulating debate that I can understand you had this morning. Unfortunately, I had another engagement this morning with open source and digital. Oops. Is it still working? Okay. So I missed that part. So you have to help me bring me up to speed with that. But in the meantime, I just have a few observations helped by colleagues here. So I understand you've discussed how investments in Central Asia are growing and how transport connectivity contributes to the opening of opportunities for global engagement, investment and human development, which is also the big subject for the investment forum earlier this week. And the Trans-Caspian connectivity as part of the EU Global Gateway is really, as we see it, an important solution to fulfill that goal. The gateway and its pillars recognize the scale and sense of urgency needed to address the root causes of conflict, structural development gaps, and other vulnerabilities that are still present in the region. And as we all know, including from today's discussion, sustainable, inclusive development anchored in good governance, human rights, and rule of law is the only way to achieve a durable peace and development, which is, of course, at the core of the Sustainable Development Goals, as Samuel also just outlined. It's also to be noted that infrastructures, transport and building systems and international and domestic logistics are among those industries most prone to human rights risks and abuses. So halfway to the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda, we are only on track with 15% of the goals globally. And we have gone into reverse in some of our most fundamental priorities, including the means of implementation. So we have a lot of work ahead of us. The Global Gateway and the Team Europe initiative can, therefore, we see be a very important tool to get the SDGs back on track. But we need to make sure that they go beyond supporting just connectivity and infrastructure in middle-income countries, advancing and should advance the whole socioeconomic, human capital development, and environmental dimensions of the SDGs, and make sure that it leaves no one behind. So addressing both supply and demand aspects within a sector would maximize sustainable development outcomes across the SDGs, and also, of course, taking good care of including the social dimension. And the Global Gateway provides an opportunity to scale up this impact by mobilizing larger financial resources from the public and private sectors. And we really welcome this initiative for adding the scaling of financing that we need. And as the UN, we think it should be coupled with adequate governance and accountable systems as well, accountability systems, sorry. As this would allow for keeping track of the investments on the whole breadth of socio-economic aspects, human rights, and environmental dimensions of the 2030 agenda, and not only look at the hard infrastructure aspects. Also, the UN is very much advocating for the importance of advancing human development through continued investment in resilient social infrastructure and human rights-based approaches through these new instruments. And we have had many discussions and debates with the EU in rolling out the Global Gateway to make this more visible. So we have had very constructive conversations on this. And there's also a need to enhance frameworks for public-private partnerships to manage, finance and complex infrastructure projects and increase participation of the private sector from the outset. At the last year's SDG Summit, world leaders and the Secretary General unveiled a clear development to-do list to achieve the SDGs on in the second half. And as I said, we are nowhere near achieving even halfway. So we have to really accelerate our efforts. First of all, the advice from the Secretary General is that we have to focus on 6 key transitions ranging from digital to food systems to energy, through education, social protection and jobs, climate and biodiversity. These are the 6 transition areas that are required to have extra focus for investment to turn this agenda around. And the Global Gateway, with its links and synergies across digital, energy and transport, and also anchored in sustainable development, we believe can be very transformative in this regard. Secondly, we need to reinvigorate the means of implementation, and here I mean in particular financing for development. And here the Secretary General has called for a 500 billion annual package to be unleashed to achieve this goal. And also a very radical reform to the financial institutions rules and regulations and incentives for lending, which is another big item for the Summit of the Future coming up in September. So for Central Asia, UNDP specifically is assisting several governments through the implementation of UNDP SDG Finance Service Offer. And that's from impact measurement. We use integrated national financing frameworks for budgeting, for sustainable development, and leveraging of international public finance for the SDGs. As we have heard also from the representative of the UNRC from Kazakhstan, who was here earlier this week at the Investors Forum. The Integrated National Financing Frameworks is a platform which is nationally led but supported by the UN and the EU with all the stakeholders relevant for the national planning around the SDGs and matching financing up against the SDG national plans. So it's a very important instrument to land. And here's, we say that the Global Gateway could benefit from landing on this platform that is already there to identify the sectors that are needed to be invested in. The Trans-Caspian connectivity will directly contribute to vital regional development aspects, including the generation of decent employment and also fostering resilient agriculture and enhancing business environment and promoting education and facilitating sustainable production. So it has huge potential. And recognizing the critical importance of the intertwining economic development with sustainable ecosystem management, it is evident that the potential of transportation and regional development should be rooted in sustainable land and seascape management with the consideration of the impact to the ecosystems and livelihoods of people in the region. Such approach not only fosters economic growth, as we know, and will be relevant for the region too, but also safeguards the integrity of the ecosystems that are also very vulnerable in this region. The Caspian Sea's decline, or sea level decline, has had extensive economic ramifications for the entire region. As an example, notably affecting shipping traffic and with consequent impact on maritime trade. And also, as we develop coastal infrastructure, including ports, it's imperative to consider the receding waters and affected ecosystem here. Hence, this requires comprehensive exploration in tandem with strategic investment planning to address these challenges effectively. So to wrap up, UNDP recommends adopting a sustainable landscape management approach. That sounds very academic, but we have methods for convening this and for the future development of the Caspian region to be able to achieve the goals across the range of the 17 goals. And in partnership with the Ministry of Ecology and Natural Resources of the Republic of Kazakhstan, we are planning a large-scale project in the region funded by the Global Environmental Facility. And the aim of such initiative is to promote an integrated ecosystem-based approach to conserve key species and habitats of the Caspian Sea and ensure sustainable economic development for local communities. So this is just an example to demonstrate that it is indeed possible to have this whole of society approach in rolling out the investment in the connectivity. And I understand that initially in the forum earlier this week, sustainability did not feature very prominently in the discussions. And this is, I think, today what we would really like to underline and focus on in order to make sure that it doesn't only become a hard infrastructure ambition, but it indeed looks at all the consequences and integrated aspects of development for the region. So thank you very much.
First of all, thank you. Thank you very much, Camilla, for starting off and introducing us to the broader picture of how the SDGs are complementary with a global gateway and its many initiatives which are being financed here now by the Investors Forum. Also, thank you for raising the important question of perhaps some lacking attention towards the environmental sustainability aspect. I think it's worth noting that that's an extremely important aspect for Central Asia because of the question of water scarcity. Water scarcity beyond having, of course, detrimental impacts for agriculture, which under a global gateway will be a very, very important trading link. beyond that, it also evokes serious risk of societal problems. Climate change has direct impacts, not only in the ROC, but also deviation of water and water scarcity in the south of Central Asia from the Amur Darbar. This is having a big impact on populations. And so that's a very, very dangerous societal topic, which I think all governments should be very wary about, and that gives an additional impetus to why climate change and sustainability is very, very important for societal stability as well. Now, I would like to move on to our next panelist, which is Dimitri Mariasin, who is the Deputy Executive Secretary of the UN Economic Commission. And prior to joining this position, he was the resident representative of the UNDP in Armenia. So as you can see, we're going from broader, bigger views into more localized regional views. And I very much look forward to hearing from you. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and it's really good to be part of this panel. I'd like to thank you for inviting me, and it's really good to be sharing this stage with my dear colleagues Camilla and Katarzyna as well. Dear colleagues, I'd like to focus primarily on the trade and transport connectivity in Central Asia as a topic that is very dear to UNECE, as we do host the UN's intergovernmental body on transport that deals with corridors and interconnectivity between Asia and Europe as one of its topics. But I'll try to also reflect a little bit on the really important environmental and climate-related challenges that the region is facing. And actually, the two, connectivity and environmental resilience, are very much interconnected. But let me start with the basic point. We are dealing with a lot of landlocked and double landlocked developing countries in the region. The lack of sea access and high transport costs and transit costs are real constraints on the competitiveness and the sustainable development of the Central Asian countries, as well as the countries in the Caucasus. We believe that investment in infrastructure is key, and the European Union's very systematic approach to make sure that this investment in infrastructure is scaled up with the Global Gateway and with the recently announced initiatives is really welcome, and it was much needed. But infrastructure investment is not the only thing that matters. It's not enough. In addition to it, we need a lot of soft measures that will actually make these investments work and will make them contribute to sustainable development. So we believe that smart regulation plays a big role, ensuring that connectivity is not just the rail line or the actual physical connectors, but also removing bottlenecks where they matter the most. And we believe that digitalization will play a very important role. And again, I think here there is a very clear strategic vision from the EU being articulated earlier this week, where the importance of digital solutions was emphasized by many. We focus a lot on the region because, of course, it plays a big role in global trade, and in the traditional, Silk Route has now become a very, very important de facto route connecting the two largest trade hubs, China and Europe. And the challenge, though, is that connections need to take place also in the regulatory space. You need to have norms and standards that countries can share across this very long and geographically dispersed value chain. And while in the UN Economic Commission for Europe, we work very closely with all partners, it's not always easy to get them join a global UN regime. So frankly, my first message, and it's a very simple one, we believe there's no point in reinventing the wheel, and countries of Central Asia would do really well by using existing UN norms and standards, including some hosted by UNECE, to help them reduce trade bottlenecks, improve the connection, reduce the transit time. One of them is the electronic tier international system. This is the electronic version of the famous tier convention. You've all seen the trucks with the tier sign. Well, the good news is that that's no longer a pack of papers. This is an electronic, fully digitalized system now, and most of the countries in Central Asia have joined it. We have Uzbekistan fully connected. We're expecting the interconnection of Kazakhstan's customs to the system in the coming month. And when this is done, this will make a real difference. There is also the electronic version of the CMR consignment node, which harmonizes contractual conditions for goods transported by road. There is a very important new development in our intergovernmental body on transport. It's called Unified Railway Law, which was adopted in November 2023. And for the first time, this will allow railway operators along this long value chain to work with a single legal regime connecting Europe and Asia along a single rail axis. And finally, there are standards for data exchange, the so-called multimodal transport reference data model hosted by the UN Center for Trade Facilitation and E-Business, here ECE, CFACT. Actually, very few people know that, but the CFACT standards for data exchange are being used in the European Union every day. And they are kind of a common IT foundation for traders around the world, including in the EU and increasingly in Central Asia. So we call for a very strong partnership with EU institutions on this. We believe these are very important soft solutions that can significantly improve the effectiveness of infrastructure investment by the Team Europe in Central Asia. Secondly, we'd like to note that there are many corridors, there are many routes. And of course, as part of the Euro-Asian Transport Corridors project of ECE, we've been looking at some 9 rail and 9 road corridors. I will not go into the details now. We host, as one intergovernmental body established by member states, the Coordination Committee on the Trans-Caspian Corridor. And in this context, UNICE and all the partners on the UN side stand ready to work very closely with the European Union and the Central Asian member states in the wake of the announcement of the coordination platform earlier this week. We believe that the coordination platform announced at the EU Global Gateway Forum is an important development. We would like to see how we link it to the ongoing intergovernmental discussions within the UN on the transport corridor side. We believe that when we talk about transport and trade, we need to make sure that they are sustainable and safe. It's not just about how many goods cross the border in how many days. We need to look at these corridors as development corridors. There needs to be a real sense of benefits for the populations along these routes. There needs to be a very close attention paid to the economic, social, and environmental elements of massive investments in transport infrastructure. We've seen cases where major infrastructure projects have hurt the communities, and we need to avoid that. And so we have, as one tool, some sustainable inland transport connectivity indicators that can be used. We have worked with the World Meteorological Organization to map it in a GIS-based application that looks at, for example, the vulnerabilities of transport routes to climate change in Central Asia, very, very specifically from the point of view of climate change adaptation. You need to know whether a transport route will be vulnerable to severe flooding, for example, in the years to come, and to map those risks also from the perspective of whether the investment needs to be underpinned by a stronger attention to climate factors. And finally, road safety. With the massive increase in road traffic along the Trans-Caspian route, we call for very special attention to safer road systems. People die on the roads every day. It's 1.3 million globally, but truck drivers are, of course, very vulnerable to this, as are pedestrians on often not properly marked and lit roads. And often the rush to increase the throughput leads to higher deaths on the road. So we also think that road safety is another topic to be considered. And here we work very closely with the European Union. In fact, the European Union is chairing the advisory board of the UN Road Safety Fund. And I think there is a lot of scope to work together on that element as well. Finally, dear colleagues, all I've been talking about has become a real point of attention by Central Asian countries. You saw the very strong ownership by ministers who came from Central Asia to Brussels earlier this week. In November last year, UNICE and our fellow Regional Commission for Asia and the Pacific, UNESCAP, supported Azerbaijan as the chair of the Special Program for the Economies of Central Asia in hosting the first ever summit of this special program, the SPECA summit in Baku. And at that summit, the leaders of the Central Asian countries, the presidents and heads of government of the Central Asian countries and Azerbaijan adopted a roadmap for digitalizing the multimodal data and document exchange along the Trans-Caspian corridor. That means we have the highest level government attention there. We have real commitment of the countries to work together in a very well-informed regional cooperation mode, using UN norms and standards, but also relying on extremely important partnership with the European Union to make sure these investments actually lead to prosperity and competitiveness for the region. So I'll end at that. I think we have a lot of work to do. We have strong buy-in from the governments. We have a really important leadership drive from the European Union, and you can count on the United Nations, including the regional commissions, as well as our partners in the specific agencies and, of course, UN resident coordinators on the ground to make sure that we as the UN make a contribution to this important task. Thank you, and over.
Thank you so much to Dimitri for a comprehensive intervention on this subject. What I took away from that was especially the priority of soft connectivity. At the Investors Forum on Monday afternoon, there was also a panel on soft connectivity. They jokingly said, whoever entered this room are the intelligent ones. I'm not sure that's true, but I'm sure that is the technical one. And the technical one doesn't always get the merit or attention because, technical, legal, trade agreement details, e-customs and whatnot are less tangible than, a big bridge or a cable, underwater cable or something. And so I think there's a lot of merit in that, and there has to be a lot of attention in those things. And then, of course, the mentioning of the coordination platform is essential. We will see what that materializes, how it materializes, but that will be very interesting to follow. And then finally, again, the focus on benefit of the populations. Again, sustainable stability and prosperity equals populations benefits. So thank you so much, Dimitri, for clarifying all of that. And I would like to now move on to our next panelist, who will do a somewhat deviation from the UN speakers and try to give the member state perspective of essentially a country that up until somewhat recently gave somewhat less attention to the region, but in recent few years has given much more. Next speaker is Emmanuel Dupuy, who is the president of l'Institut de Prospective et Sécurité en Europe, IPSE. It's a leading French institute that essentially focuses on Central Asia and the Caucasus, among other regions. But I got to know about it because of that, and also because there isn't that much attention in the country. And so I've had the opportunity to work with Emmanuel before, and I'm very happy that you're here with us today. Thank you.
The pleasure is mine, Samuel. Thank you so much for hosting me. I would have liked to speak in French because we are here in a United Nations capacity, but of course, for the matter of better understanding, I will speak in English, and thanking UNDP for hosting me. So I have a very difficult task to explain to you why France has finally understood the strategic importance of Caucasus, South Caucasus, and Central Asia. I'm not speaking on an official position, but I'm a geopolitician. I will try to say and give some food for thoughts, or thought for food, in a way to explain why we should emphasize this. In a way, going from UN and EU perspective to a more specific bilateral or multilateral perspective, or a alignment strategy. I will focus on that as well. And I will kick off by saying that besides the overall picture that you mentioned about the global gateway, we have to take in consideration the new mindset and the perspective about the understanding of the necessity to have not only since 2015 a near neighborhood European policy, but a second or third line neighborhood policy. And say let's say the second or third circle, Caucasus being the second, South Caucasus, and East Asia being the third. I will, of course, emphasize on this strategy since I think the recent month, starting from the visits of the French president in a certain number of countries, has pinpointed the change of narrative that France and, of course, other countries have for the region and on a win-to-win geopolitical, geoeconomical, and geocultural position. So France's awareness is not only based on the fact that it is an important pillar of the global gateway, not only because it is sustaining significantly the global gateway, but also because it needs to emphasize its own vision or strategic vision inside the European Union and duplicate it in other regions. Let me be more clear. We are advocating for European Union autonomic strategy or autonomic strategy, autonomy strategy, autonomic strategy. Strategic autonomy. Strategic autonomy is better understandable this way. And I think this is what exactly is happening or should happen in other parts of the world. As we are pushing for less dependency from countries who, on an economical, geopolitical, and military way, are putting pressure on diplomatic position, we should help others who are thinking the same way. I will pinpoint later on that. And of course, someone asked me to make you understand better the diplomatic narrative of France. First of all, I have to say that it's not only about Central Asia, not only about South Caucasus, it goes way further geographically speaking, and we have to kick off with the visit of Emmanuel Macron in Mongolia in last May, and of course to come back to the visits that Emmanuel Macron made in Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and recently in India, because I think all of the strategy that France and other countries are pushing is a new EU Ostpolitik. Let me precise it in the way that it was thought in the 1970s, put by Germany being the first to understand the strategic importance of Central Asia, since it was under the German presidency in 2000 that it was the first Central Asian strategy, which was then implemented in 2007 and remodernized in 2019. And so I think it's important to have this substantial, to understand the position of a country like France. I'm not again speaking on an official position, explaining why we are putting more emphasis on the diplomatic support to these countries, why we have now a more geopolitical interest and more pragmatical investment of our companies and of our states. Global gateway connectivity strategy is not only about Central Asia. It's about having a grand strategy, a Belt and Road initiative, a plan for the next 30 years, well, till 2030, but again, on a more planification modus, and this is what France can understand, as we have always advocated on the fact that we do not have to have a short track, but a long-running EU policy in matter to liaise with our partner. So we're very happy that the European Union has dedicated 300 billion, but we do not think it's sufficient because China has invested 3 times more and for a longer period of time, coming back to the launch of the Belt and Road Initiative in November 2013 in Kazakhstan, in the National Nazarbayev University. So my approach would be very simple, try to lay out a certain number of prospects and a certain number of projects in which this new French, let's say, realpolitik narrative is standing and not again focusing only on global gateway. And then I will continue with three major takeaways that I want to share with you. First of all, as I mentioned, global gateway is not the only vehicle, is not the only pillar of this outreach outside the near neighborhood of France. France is maybe less than other European countries a bit less eager to follow the Belt and Road Initiative, but we signed in 2014 the appartenance of France in the Asian Investment Infrastructure Bank, and this is a first sign of a commitment of our Eastern Oriental outreach. Second of all of the projects that are willing to compete, I could add maybe deter a certain number of grand strategy from hegemonic, civilizational, hubris strategy countries, such as Russia, such as China, I may add Turkey, are welcome to understand why Europe should be engaging with not only its neighborhood policy, but its neighboring countries, but on a wider perspective. This is why I think there's not an overlap about all of the projects to think of the role of the European Union in the direction of Central Asia and South Caucasus. The B23 Build Back Better World is also a subject on which I think, which was launched at the G7 in 2020, is something on which we should advocate. I do understand as well that we are following up very actively on engagement in a more diplomatic, pragmatic position in the European political community, which liaises with at least three countries that we have been dealing today, Georgia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan, and I've been advocating with other experts that we enlarge the EPC as we did with the Union for the Mediterranean, which was a strategy out of the box, not only linked to the regional policies of the Union. Maybe we have with the EPC a capacity to liaise with countries besides the Black Sea or east to the Black Sea and maybe east to the Caspian Sea as well. And this brings us to what I wanted to focus in my takeaway. All that we are speaking of is in the core of the new multi-non-alignment policy. Speaking about the global gateway is bringing partners to a capacity of liaising and to have a significant dialogue with countries who are already developed, who are already stabilized, who are already part of the international community or the international governing community, if I may add so. This is why I make this point, because President Macron made this trip in Mongolia in May, went to Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan in November, and was in India last week, and he spoke exactly in the same terms. We need to have a sort of no Washington, no Beijing, and I should add no Ankara strategy. This is exactly what General de Gaulle said in the 1960s. We need to liaise on a non-alignment strategy. This is where we need to reboot the non-alignment movement, which we try to do with a sort of understandable difficulty under the presidency of Azerbaijan, but maybe with the presidency of Uganda and the Kampala meeting a few days ago maybe gives us a capacity to do so, as well as to be more offensive or more offensive and friendly in regards to new organization. I think this is exactly what is happening with the occidentalization of Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Shanghai Cooperation Organization will be in 10 years an occidental organization when a certain number of states will want to join the 9 members of Shanghai, moreover because they are now overlapping or they are now stronger on an economical perspective than the G7 members. I could add, of course, the enlargement of the BRICS, and this will be very clear with the Kazan summit in October 2024, where you will have both Oriental and Occidental countries joining the new organization, which will therefore be of interest for the European Union and of France in particular. This is when maybe you can understand the fact that Emmanuel Macron asked for France to be an observer of the BRICS. This was not assessed during the last Johannesburg summit. Thus, ongoing growing interest in the middle corridor is important. We already spoke about that. ENSTC, of course, but as we are French, we always like to have countermeasures. ENSTC is very important, but the narrative changed 710 days ago when Russia invaded Ukraine. And we are eager to think that there is a counter project I would manage to say in correct English, international transport corridor, besides going from Mumbai, Shabazar, Astrakhan, and Baku, and to St. Petersburg. And this is why we are advocating more actively in the recent months for the IMEC corridor, the India Middle East European Transport Corridor, which has the very significant perspective to put aside both Iran and both Russia, and to go and engage from Saudi Arabia, from India to United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, and Israel, and then to Greece. So I come to my 3 takeaways. First of all, as I already mentioned, but I will go a bit more rapidly on that. European Union needs a grand strategy, in a way its own Belt and Road endeavor going east, but of course looking south. I see this is very important. The Belt and Road initiative is not so only going out and bringing in, as James Ompin said in the last Belt and Road summit 3 months ago, but also looking in areas where there is competition. If Belt and Road is going throughout Eurasia to Europe, it's also focusing a lot on Africa. Therefore, we should emphasize global gateway in the direction of Central Asia, and to focus again also on Africa. I think this is what Ursula von der Leyen said prior to the EU-African Summit, dedicating half of the sum to Africa, 150 billion of euros among the 3 billion of euros. All of the SDGs that you mentioned, of course, are at challenge, at risk in Africa. So my first perspective is how do we build this, and how we have a counter project to the one that Beijing has launched in November 2013. My second position is based on the fact that if we want to partner and if we want to liaise with the area that we're tackling with, or that we are speaking of, we need to have a sort of modelization of regional integration. European Union cannot speak on a 27 plus 5 or 27 1 instead of, I said it in the wrong way. We need to have a 27 plus 5 or 27 plus 3, speaking and advocating and pushing for more integrated Central Asia, more integrated South Caucasus. Again, what I'm speaking of is exactly what happened in Samarkand in 2015, when the 5 Central Asian states, besides belonging to SICA, besides belonging to SCO, besides, for some of them, belonging to the Common Security Treaty Organization or the Eurasian Economical Association, a union, decided that it was time to build a union amongst themselves. Sort of Central Asian union, and I think this is something we should advocate as well as we are doing it in Central Asia. We should be doing it as we are doing it, pushing it in Central Asia. We should push it in South Caucasus as well. 27 plus 5, 27 plus 3, as I mentioned. And this brings me to something that the French president has been advocating very recently about the slogan of the third neighbor. All of the countries that we are speaking of want to get rid of the dependency, want to get rid of the dependency to the strong hegemon or to the strong partners which the areas to which they belong. Beijing on one side, Moscow on the other. This is something we are advocating very strongly. And my third and last point in 1 minute. To do so, we need to bring out the fact that you cannot build Central Asian unity if you don't have a strong commitment of the strongest of the partners inside that area. Europe was built on a commitment, 9th of May 1950, la Déclaration de Schuman, April 1951, la Communauté Européenne du Charbon et de l'Acier, March 1957, unity among the six, because there was a will of two countries, France and Germany. And I think you could have, maybe this will open a debate with our other Central Asian partners, you cannot think of interconnectivity amongst European Union and Central Asia if you don't have inside Central Asia a strong commitment between the two strongest partners, which is Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. And I praise the fact that the strategic partnership, which was launched in December 2022, between President Mirziyoyev and President Jomart Tokayev, is going in the same direction. In French, we have the same comparaison des paraisons. But as we are celebrating 70 years of European unity and 61 years of Franco-German unity, I think the commitment between Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan is essential to build this strategic autonomy, because we need it on a European perspective, but we cannot build a strategic autonomy if we don't have a counter partner. No Washington, no Beijing, no Washington, no Moscow. Maybe we can have stronger commitments with this area, and this is exactly what Emmanuel Macron said in India a few days ago.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel, for such a broad geopolitical French perspective as well as ambition. I take away many things. I was very interested in listening to the details of your vision. And the first thing that caught my mind was a strategic vision necessitates the countries along the corridor. Ankara has notorious difficulties with the EU and namely with France, but nonetheless, it's a very, very important stakeholder along this corridor. And as a result, I think it will probably be an important role for France to play in mending those ties in the future for the sake of a lot of the strategy which has been taking place this week, including investments. First thing that came to mind. Second thing was so very, very interesting recommendation on EPC. On your, EPC is coming up soon in London. Well, there's no date yet, but hopefully
April, May.
Yeah, tentative dates are available indeed, and it will be very, very interesting to see how countries like Central Asia, the plus ones, can figure into that constellation, especially at the time in which the EU is reframing, reconsidering the Eastern Partnership. I think on that note, I will move on to our final speaker, who is Katerina Vaviernia, who is a resident representative of UNDP in Kazakhstan, someone with a lot of on-the-ground experience. So we go from very geopolitical to very specific, and that's great because if you don't understand both, then you're lost. Thank you. Please.
Thank you very much. Dear ambassadors, dear colleagues, dear participants, a warm greeting from sunny, snowy Astana. Thank you for inviting UNDP Kazakhstan to this important discussion and hearing our voices from the field. We heard today about expected impact of Trans-Caspian International Trade Corridor and boosting economies, income and employment. And as UN today, we brought more people-centered approach. And we heard also a little bit, maybe less, on challenges and possible risks. As we know from the examples of already accomplished other transport infrastructure investments, Central Asian countries may encounter a number of challenges related to their sustainable development and environmental protection, especially. No doubt, development of transport corridor in Central Asia will directly contribute to vital regional development aspects, including the generation of decent employment, fostering resilient agriculture, enhancing the business environment, promoting education, and facilitating sustainable production. Trade expansion is an accelerator for other sustainable development goals, as these sustainable development goals are very interconnected. Sustainable development goals 9, which is industry, innovation, and infrastructure, transport infrastructure plays a pivotal role in advancing sustainable development by expediting and fortifying a substantial number of SDGs. So based on analytics of Central Asia SDG platform, and I will tell you more about this platform later, the attainment of nearly 50% of SDG targets and indicators in Central Asia depends significantly on the capacity the region has to develop innovative infrastructure, with a particular emphasis on establishing new transport connectivity opportunities. So it's a really big game changer. So what is this SDG platform for Central Asia? So since 2015, UNDP has been actively working with the governments of Central Asia states on integration of SDGs into the strategic planning and budgeting. We have created the Central Asia Regional SDG platform, founded actually by European Union, which offers a comprehensive perspective on the interconnectedness of sustainable development goals with key trends in regional development. This is a digital solution. It produces many analytics. It's visual also. And it allows to track the progress and not challenges, alert on risks on SDG implementation for guiding decision makers. We strongly believe that data collection and exchange frameworks within UNDP-led initiatives like Central Asia SDG Platform and Central Asia Trade Intelligence Platform could be tailored further to guide the policy design and allocation of investments, measure progress, and mitigate potential risks related to SDG achievements, specifically related to this investment. Moreover, this tool will enable a swift call to possible socio-environmental risks. And I think some speaker mentioned this important aspect, but I would like to stress even more on this. We invite our development partners to use this instrument, these platforms, for evidence-based and risk-informed decision-making. There are direct costs of transport development to the environment: deforestation, loss of biodiversity, and general degradation of ecosystem. Of course, CO2 emissions. The transport sector is a major consumer of energy resources and also one of the major emitters. There are important trades-offs between economy and welfare and impacts on environmental quality. We recommend adopting a sustainable landscape management approach for the future development of the Caspian region. In this regard, UNDP, in partnership with the government of Kazakhstan, is planning a large-scale initiative aimed at promoting an integrated ecosystem-based approach to conserve key species and habitats of the Caspian Sea and ensure sustainable economic development for local communities. Throughout its history, the Caspian Sea has been a very important source of biological resources. They make up a single ecosystem that requires strong protection from natural and people-made factors. We would like to continue supporting a common strategic framework for promotion of a sustainable marine economy and shift from a focus of revenue generation and production system to an ecological centered vision of systems and wealth and well-being and therefore on an integrated approach to conservation, economy, livelihoods, and jobs. We invite our development partners to join us in this endeavor and do no harm to unique ecosystem. Given the benefits of SDG acceleration, power of transport connectivity projects, we believe it is possible to reduce the burdens on environmental and social costs by seeking the inputs of the international and local partners into one joint action. Over the years, UNDP has accumulated experience and expertise that can be used to meet the challenges of our program countries. The right path of Central Asian states towards sustainable development should be accompanied by the data-driven, evidence-based, and risk-informed decision-making, using the knowledge and the best practices worldwide. Thank you very much, and this is just a few words from Kazakhstan and from UNDP Kazakhstan. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Katerina for this comprehensive intervention as well, with a strong focus on environment and biodiversity. And I'm not surprised that, I mean, it's wonderful to hear that there, I didn't know about it, that there's this partnership between Kazakhstan and the UN, also because, well, it's so important, again, coming back to the problem of Caspian Sea, infrastructure connectivity, when you have these environmental damages and problems, which might have negative, will likely have negative consequences in the future, as well as the focus on local communities, which I think is of extreme importance, especially considering the fact that one of our partners in the US, Oxus Society, that we've worked with for many, many years, they have something very interesting, sorry, which is the protest tracker. And the protest tracker essentially shows that local communities that are being disenfranchised, that are not engaged in the labor process, in the environmental process, that are, you know, fishing communities that are being left behind and so on, are more likely to create protests, are more likely to have societal problems, which again comes back to this idea of having sustainable growth and sustainable economic development. So we've had the chance to listen to all our speakers, and I'm happy that there's still an audience, but there's good reason for it, because they've been saying such interesting and great things. And so now I would like to give you the opportunity to ask your questions, and if there are any brief comments. If I can have a show of hands, I can see a gentleman here already, another gentleman there. I can see Ipek in the back, the ambassador will go there. There are many. Okay, so I will take 3 questions, give everyone the option just to have maximum 2-minute responses, and then I will go back to the next question. So please, I'll give you the microphone so that online can hear us too.
Cool, guys. I'm one of the guides in the House of European History. How do you see the relationship between Global Gateway and Belt and Road Initiative? Is it only rivalry, or is there the chance for cooperation as well?
The gentleman, the Bordeaux cardigan.
Thank you. I'd like to shift to focus a little bit and focus on the 4th SDG, which is quality education. I'd like to ask, what are the perspectives of future cooperation of Central Asian countries to the European education area, and what are some economic perspectives that can facilitate that?
Marat, I think, then we'll get to you, Ipek.
Thanks, thanks there. Thank you, everybody. Good to see Emmanuel, old friend, and as well. It has been a while, but it's never too late. Look, I'm going to be a little bit of a devil's advocate here. You know, I've been following Central Asia since my...
Speaking from, I don't know, I haven't met you yet, so...
Yeah, hi, my name's Marat Tartarev. I represent the Brussels Energy Club. It's a platform here on energy debates, discussion, and enabling business development in the region as well. I was just going to say, I'm going to be a little bit devil's advocate because I've been following Central Asia since 1997. That was my first trip to Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Kyrgyzstan. And I've seen a lot of, let's say, grand plans in the construction. We had in the 1990s this Transecca program under the EU TASIS sort of wider program, which was really all about connectivity, about infrastructure development. Then BISEC, the Black Sea Economic Cooperation Organization, sort of took over a little bit of this sort of program. All of this faded away in the 2000s because Central Asia started developing on its own. And then the Chinese came in. So I'm going to be a little bit devil's advocate, Emmanuel, particularly with some of your comments. Do we really need a grand strategy for Central Asia? Do we really need, kind of a geopolitical vision, excuse me, for that region? I think the region is doing quite well on its own. I visited Uzbekistan 4 times last year and, have a pretty good perspective over the past 25 years. And when I say that the region is doing well on its own, I'd like to underline one fact, one axiom. The elephant in the room here really is not China, and it's not the EU, and it's not the United States, but it's actually the Gulf countries, the GCC, Saudi Arabia and the UAE in particular. So these countries are actually driving economic development in the region, particularly from a sustainability perspective. I mean, it's fine to talk about, SDGs and kind of very, let's say, laudable, visionary sort of objectives for the people of the region. But today it is the Saudi companies and the Emirati companies, both private and kind of parastatal, if you like, that are actually driving sustainability in the region. So within that context, I'd just like to leave you with the thought that I think Central Asia is not doing badly from an economic development perspective, from a broader, let's say, trickle-down effect, if you like, into civil society. Of course, there's a lot of work to do in terms of lifting these countries towards, let's say, middle-class sort of society. But nevertheless, I'd be happy to have your thoughts on that. Do we really need a grand strategy? Thank you.
Very briefly, my name is Dipek Tekdemir. I'm working for the European Parliament, and I've been following closely Central Asia for some time. So my question is to Monsieur Emmanuel. Actually, you have mentioned during your intervention about the Washington and Ankara strategies. So could you please elaborate on this specifically? As how do you think that how the EU, European Union, should interact with these strategies?
All right, I think we'll give the opportunity for our speakers to answer these first 4 questions, and then we'll do another round. If I understand correctly, Emmanuel, you would like to maybe go first on the first question with regards to Global Gateway, BRI, and so forth, and then we'll get to Emmanuel.
So thank you for raising this question. It actually just happens that only 3 weeks ago, I had a meeting with my colleague, the resident coordinator in Beijing. And while I'm no expert in the Belt and Road Initiative, I think I know a little bit more about the Global Gateway sitting here. From a political point of view and for world peace, if you want, from the UN perspective, it really would be, very desirable if these 2 programs or these 2 initiatives or ambitions, visions could come together and look at the complementarity, because there is a complementarity as far as I can see. First of all, I also think that since the Belt and Road Initiative has been in play for a lot longer, there's been many lessons learned from that approach. And we also see that the Chinese are adjusting to some of those lessons learned. I think it would be very welcome if, the global community were looking into this together and adopt or applying or learning from these lessons and putting that into their own plans, as I think the EU probably has, at least, had a look without maybe putting it in so clear terms. And also because the EU is now investing in areas that some hard infrastructure, but also on the softer, the digital side. And and looking at more the comprehensive all of society economic packages that are needed. So not just the infrastructure, but all the governance aspects, the societal inclusion, you know, social contract aspects of all of this. So I think, you know, if we are to get back on track on the SDGs, we could accelerate even further if these two could come together and see what are the complementarities. So I discussed this with my very dear colleague Sid in Beijing, whether we could arrange maybe as UN a roundtable or a gathering around that. I'm not sure the environment is ripe for this at the moment. I think we have to get beyond the European elections and then see, you know, what constellation could we possibly put together to start a conversation like this. Also because it's, you know, first of all, if we are to achieve the SDGs, I think we all need to work together to mobilize the necessary financing. As you said, 300 billion is great, but it's not enough. And it of course, the EU shouldn't pay everything. So we need others on board, and we need others to pursue, you know, the same direction. We saw how powerful the Millennium Development Goals were when the world community gathered around these 8 goals. And the same idea was with the SDGs. And we got quite well on our way until the pandemic hit. And that's when we got off track. So, and then we've had the added crisis that, you know, are exacerbating that drawback. So let's discuss that further and see, you know, when is the right moment, and see how we can work together.
Thank you. Okay, I will take maybe a little time to complement what you said about the possibility of working and liaising with Belt and Road Initiative and therefore with China. And we have a political response. It depends on who is in power among the states who want to liaise with China. The actual commission defined very broadly what should be the relation with China. It's a strategic partner, but a systemic adversary. Will it be the same thing after the election of the 6th and the 9th of June? Maybe not. Will it be the same thing after the elections in Austria in October? Second round of election in Finland, where the right and extreme right will be stronger. Will it be the case even in Belgium when there will be elections? Do not forget the European Union, as the United Nations, depends on the will and the capacity of the states. Antonio Guterres is only the representative of what the states want or do not want. Same thing with the European Union. So there may be an amelioration. They cannot, maybe there could be a deterioration. Best case example, Italy. Mario Monti, who was not supposed to be maybe as friendly as one could say or suppose to China, put Italy and signed the appartenance of Italy inside the Belt and Road Initiative. Giorgia Meloni withdraw Italy from the Belt and Road Initiative. So it depends on the political mindset and what the citizens feel better for their sake and for, of course, their immediate needs. So I do think we need to liaise. I'm not sure it will be in the interest of all the citizens of Europe that thinking in the same way as some of their leaders who may have other reasons to liaise with China. My first answer. My second answer to Marat, I didn't maybe make it very clear. I didn't say that European Union needed a grand strategy only for Central Asia. I said European Union needed a grand strategy globally. And amongst the countries that we must focus on is Central Asia, because Central Asia is in between countries with whom we do have a sort of competing geopolitical, let's say, dynamism. And again, if we are to look on what would be the sharing of power in the next 15 years, either you will have a opposition between China and the United States outside of Europe, putting aside Europe as a partner or even a theater of opposition. It will happen in Africa, it will happen in Indo-Pacific. Either you bring these actors who do not want to be the spectators of this grand strategy played by others to be a third pillar a third actor, the notion of third neighbor. And this is why I say we need to have a grand strategy in Eurasia, in Indo-Pacific, in Euro-African relations, in the Euro-Med as well, with our neighbors from the occidental or oriental part of the Mediterranean Sea. Europe should look further than the policies or the regional policies that it has, with Latin America, with Mediterranean agenda, with the Oriental Partnership, which is in more cerebral, how do you say this in English? No, because I'm using this word because Macron spoke about the brain.
Brain dead.
The brain dead of NATO, Oriental Partnership is in the same perspective. So to be clear with Mahat, I do understand that Central Asia does not need anyone to have its strategic perspective, but we need Central Asia to think the same way as we are doing in regards to their ownership of this global governance in which they have a place and a matter to play. Last point about European Union. I do feel that, again, it will be a matter of political concern to explain to the citizens what can Europe do on a diplomatic and security agenda. I'm not sure that all of the institutional framework that we have, the CSDP, the CSP, la coopération sécurité permanente, that we say in English. CSP is PESCO initiative, etc. We have a lot of initiative. We need to make it simple. And again, I'm not speaking on behalf of the government of France. I do feel that when it comes to realpolitik, when it comes to difficult tasks, liaising between Azerbaijan and Armenia, finding a solution to maybe, after the conflict, a new strategic architecture, which normally should have been the role of OSCE, which is also dead because the Minsk group has not prevented the war in Azerbaijan and Armenia, and the Minsk process has not managed to withdraw the Putin-Ubris. We need something else. We need a geopolitical body, and I do feel that the EPC could be that political body.
Excellent point to end on. I agree. I would also like to give the opportunity to Dimitri, who has his hand raised, to give a reply to whichever of the questions he feels he would like to reply to.
Thank you very much, Samuel. The questions share maybe a challenge to us as a panel about the economic reality on the ground. I would agree that one needs to be realistic, and when planning massive investments in Central Asia, be mindful of both the important footprint of investment from China and the and growing footprint of investment from the Gulf countries as well as some other players. It's simply, when planning investments, you need to know who's already in the field. And I believe the Team Europe partners such as EIB and EBRD can help do that very well, because they work very closely with the World Bank, with the Asian Development Bank and others. And they know who has been driving investments on the ground. And of course, for example, Asian Development Bank, as a major stakeholder in infrastructure investments in Central Asia and the Caucasus, has its own shareholder structure. So I'll leave it at that without going into the political angle of that. But I believe investment-wise, it's extremely important to coordinate. The second point on energy. We haven't spoken about it, but energy connectivity is almost as important for this region as is the transport connectivity. In the Soviet times, there was a commonly managed grid that has not survived the dissolution of the Soviet Union, and the countries are now struggling. And the major blackouts that took place in several Central Asian economies over the course of the past 2 years were a stark reminder that the countries need to think about it. At the SPECA summit I mentioned before, the two invited leaders was the Prime Minister of Georgia and the Prime Minister of Hungary, in addition to Central Asia and Azerbaijan. And they were there for a very good reason. There were major deals just signed on energy connectivity, Trans-Caspian, that were going in parallel to the transport routes. But the elephant in the room, when we talk about Central Asia, connectivity and competition between Europe and Asia, including China, is the topic of critical minerals. We haven't mentioned this today, but this is what will underpin the green energy transition globally. China and Central Asian countries happen to have major reserves of critical minerals. European Union is moving fast to secure its own supply and to make sure it enters into trade deals with the major suppliers to demonopolize the de facto, well, 1-2 country monopoly that exists now, for example, for palladium and a few other materials. And deals like the EU-Kazakhstan critical minerals deal signed recently will play a very important role. But one needs to realize that when we're looking at a country like Tajikistan as one example, which is also rich in critical minerals, and looking at land management and land acquisition there, with still underestimated deposits, and then juxtaposing it with what other partners and neighbors of Tajikistan are doing in terms of buying land, investing in land, or getting it as a long-term lease in exchange often for transport infrastructure investments. This is a dynamic that the European Union and all of us would do well by observing and seeing how can we go to a collaborative, more transparent trade arrangement that would also not disconnect Europe from major supply routes of critical minerals, in addition to the transport connectivity and energy connectivity as such. I'll leave it at this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dimitri, for mentioning that, a very important point about critical raw materials. I think on that note, it's also worth mentioning that the EU is signing, has already signed, France has signed, Netherlands has signed, Germany has signed perhaps the most important due diligence legislation, which essentially focuses on supply chains, which also include critical raw material, but not only, it also includes textile and automotive and a million other sectors, entire supply chain. And under these laws, they're very strict. They have penalties for companies in the EU. There's a directive which is going through in the European Parliament, and it has teeth, and it has an impact on the mining of these critical raw materials and the social, environmental, and labor standards down the value chain. So that's quite important to bear in mind. Not so much information on it yet, but one of those look out for it this year. It will be very important. One question was about education, which wasn't answered by anyone, so I will try to answer it. When you look at the budget for EAC, when you look comparatively at the budget for EAC on Erasmus, John Monnet, Erasmus Plus, and so forth, you'll see that Central Asia is very small compared to other regions. I mean, the regions that get the most within this multi-annual financial framework has been Sub-Saharan Africa. Some of those concerns have maybe been due to forced migration and conflict in that area. Other important areas have been the Western Balkans because of the accession component of these countries. So the budget is skewed towards those. And within this multi-annual financial framework, the budget is far lower, unfortunately, on Central Asia. That does not mean that it will stay like that. In fact, my personal prediction is that within the new multi-annual financial framework, the Central Asian portfolio will raise significantly. In terms of numbers of people who are actually going back and forth, exiting Central Asia into the EU and vice versa, it's about 1,000 people. Comparatively to Western Balkans, it's about 10,000. That gives you an indication of that topic. Thank you. Well, we are kind of 15 minutes over time, and there is a buffet lunch. So I'm going to ask you kindly, if it's possible, to ask your next questions to us among yourselves, and I think then we can try to answer them while having a drink and some lunch, which is only fair on everyone's time schedule and so forth. Yes. Giving the closing one. Yes. Would you like to? I apologize for that.
Well, I'm not going to hold you, between this panel and lunch, so I'll make it very quick and actually just highlight one specific aspect that is relevant in next week. Dimitri didn't mention that the executive secretary of UNICE is coming to Brussels next week. It is clear that this organization is not very well known, but I think in this group we really can see how critical role it can play diplomatically, also in getting or convene and be the platform for these dialogues that are becoming increasingly difficult because of the geopolitical situation, and that every one of you here, when you speak with partners, especially also our dear EU partners, institutions, highlight the role of this existing framework, as Dimitri called for. Let's not reinvent the wheel and create many new structures, as we have structures that have proven very successful in the past and actually laid a profound regulatory framework that we have agreed internationally on so many areas, and that touches our everyday lives. Every single day we are affected by these. Often we think it is the EU who has laid these rules or regulations or standards, but actually it is with the Economic Commission of Europe where it started. So I just call for elevating the status and knowledge about this, and also because I think we need to put all the efforts we have in our international system at the moment, as it is also under pressure from many states who are rather looking for their own interest, and this cannot serve the whole community. So this is just an appeal, and that's actually how I wanted to round off, and also thank for our other guests and for these extremely candid observations and suggestions. I've learned a lot today, and I hope you have as well, and thank you very much for coming. So, bon appetit.
How much did you do? Did you count?
I used to work with Mahat.
Alman Türk Ticaret Başkanı'na yapacağım ben ona diye espri yapıyorum.
Çok teşekkürler.
You haven't met actually.
I think we met in one of these.
Oh yes, I was in Colombia.
GMS.
I was in
Is